So today I'll show you a few things that we left out of our annual report, and you see that it was so long, and we tried to get in all kinds of facts so you would have a fair report of what we did in the year 2022. But there were some things that we sort of didn't emphasize enough. So we'll talk about them today. And the first thing that I wanted to do is to introduce our board members. So would the members of our board stand up so that everyone can meet you and see you? Ours is a working board. So the people that you see around you all do a lot of projects. And so we're so grateful to have a board. It's not like the board of Eastman Kodak where you have to be a millionaire. To be on the board of the Friends, you have to be a worker. And so we're so grateful. People that are so creative and so dedicated. So thank you very much, board. They're the important people. The first thing that I wanted to talk to you about, I hope you have all been involved in our new expanded website. You'll note that our website is data rich. That's one of the adjectives people use. It's constantly updated and it has expanded. And one new addition, we will be adding the minutes of our meetings to the website, so you can see what we do at our meetings. And by the way, all of our meetings are open to all the membership, so you're always welcome to come. It's the first Wednesday of every month. You're welcome to come and see all the kinds of projects that we are involved in. So we have a calendar that's updated daily, and we hope that you find it useful. I think you could spend a lot of hours on our website. The second thing, I'm speechless about the work that's been put into the Epitaph magazines. In 2022, we introduced thematic issues that were written by our transitional team, a group of Friends of Mount Hope researchers and writers. And we love your feedback on the first 4 that we did in 2022. And in the next 2 weeks, you'll receive our new epitaph for 2023. That's very unusual. What do you think? Have you enjoyed reading our epitaphs? Mm-hmm. And many of the writers are here. Why don't you just raise your hand if you're one of our writers? See, they're very humble people. And we even have in the back row, who's very humble, one of the new writers. Dan, why don't you stand up so we can? We have recruited another writer. So it's going to be in the summer that you'll be reading an article written by Dan. Thanks. Now you know that we love Amy Post. And 2022 was our tribute to Amy Post. It was a wonderful celebration. We have a video of that particular event on our website that was produced by our friends at RIT. Hannah Davis is the person that was kind enough to make that video along with her students at RIT. What a wonderful collaboration. And Hannah is here tonight videotaping us again. So yay RIT and yay Hannah for all the work that you do for us. This ceremony about Amy Post was a culmination of a long-term project to secure and dedicate a historic marker to honor Amy Post. And it took us several years because it was like a nationwide competition. So because we were awarded this historic marker, we thank the National Collaborative for Women's History Sites in partnership with the Pomeroy Foundation. I have to say all these words every time I mention that fact. for establishing the National Votes for Women Trail, honoring women and places involved in the suffrage movement. And it's located near Amy Post's gravesite. It's quite lovely and quite unique. A highlight of 2022 was the arrival of the Holocaust Monument and the success of our fundraiser, which netted $35,000, including a $10,000 grant from the William and Sheila Konar Foundation. The Holocaust Project is a major initiative of the Friends of Mount Hope. On our website are the bios of 64 Holocaust survivors out of 110 possible survivors. The rest have to be researched. That these people are all buried at Mount Hope. What an honor it is to be involved in this project and to remember the lives of these courageous individuals. Now, May 7th, I think you all know about May 7th because you all got a postcard, is the dedication of the Holocaust Monument, and you're all invited to attend. Committee chairs Marcia Bierkin, sitting right here, and Marjorie Searle lead this amazing project, and they would welcome your participation. So please put May 7th on your calendar. It's going to be a very special day in the history of Mount Hope and the history of Rochester. Did any of you attend the Fringe Festival?
Yes.
It's pretty amazing. Another highlight of our 2022 season was our collaboration with the Fringe Festival in presenting When the Souls Rise, produced and directed by Ann Wilcox with music by Ward Hartenstein. Over 1,000 people joined us in 3 presentations of this creative dance theater production. First time in Mount Hope to have a play such as this. So we were really honored that this was supported by the Fringe Festival. In 2022, Mount Hope was awarded Level 2 accreditation by ARBNet Accreditation Program. The Friends of Mount Hope were very involved in this application, which was a 3-year process. In order to apply, an arboretum needed a collection of over 100 different species of trees. For 3 years, almost every tree that the Friends of Mount Hope planted was a new species, which resulted in us having 120 different species in 2022. This accreditation was also dependent on our programming featuring tree tours, tree talks on our YouTube channel, restoration projects like Second Saturday program, and our 3-year tree tagging initiative and our Plants Math website. The Friends of Mount Hope is grateful to our volunteer arborist, Tom Jones. Where are you, Tom? Okay. For the success of our tree support activities, which resulted in this honor. While many of us worked alongside Tom in this effort, he was our leader and our inspiration. Isn't that true, everyone?
Yes.
We're so grateful, Tom. 2022 was the birth of our iPhone tour project entitled Story, and 2 tours have already been finished, and this app will go public in 2023 and will offer a new opportunity for visitors to learn about the history of Mount Hope Cemetery. The chairs of this adventure, and it is an adventure, are Eric and Marcia Bierkin. Raise your hand, because without their genius, we could never get this done. And we're going to do it 2023. What do you think about those pictures? The Friends of Mount Hope launched its Wildflower Initiative in 2022 not only to create beauty for our visitors, but also to help reverse habitat loss, support ecosystems, and reduce our carbon footprint. Restoring native plants isn't just about planting. Sometimes mowing less or removing invasive species is all that is needed to help native plants come back. This project and our poison ivy eradication program are led by Susan Anderson, and on the right you will see pictures of Susan fighting poison ivy trees. August 15th was a wonderful summer day to come together to honor Richard Reesum, our founder and friend. We dedicated a lovely tricolored beech tree to Richard, which will live on as a reminder of a person whose loyalty to the Friends of Mount Hope exceeded.
Pat, your mic quick.
Is that Ruby? I think so. Okay, is that good? Okay, I have to read that part again. Okay, because it's so important. We dedicated a lovely tricolored beech tree to Richard, who will live on as a reminder of a person whose loyalty to the Friends exceeded 4 decades. We can never really express our gratitude to Richard Reesum, but this tree stands as a small token of our affection and abiding respect for him and his commitment to the Friends. And I'm so happy to tell you that Richard is here tonight. Richard, could you stand up so that we can... We have something that is fairly new in the last few years at Mount Hope, and it's ensemble tours, and we think they're very exciting. And this was the brainstorm of Deb Coffey. And these are some pictures of one of our ensemble tours given in 2022 about the Civil War. She herself is a Civil War aficionado. And guests were taken to visit 9 men and women at rest in Mount Hope Cemetery who were involved in the Civil War. And gravestone presentations were given by Friends of Mount Hope tour guides who shared stories of those who fought in battles and cared for wounded soldiers and brothers who fought together. A special thanks to Deb Coffey for being the creator of our ensemble tours. These tours are favorites here at Mount Hope Cemetery. And where are you, Deb? There you are. And if you look at the brochure that you received, I hope you circled all of the ensemble tours that will be given in 2023. So the fun goes on and on. We did talk a lot about restoration in our annual report, but repairing fallen and broken gravestones is a main objective of our restoration efforts. All the work that the Friends of Mount Hope have done in the past 3 years, it's maintained with Friends of Mount Hope funds. And what I mean is that if a stone falls down after being repaired, it's immediately repaired again, and we're serious about maintaining the areas that we've already repaired. 83% of our income from memberships, that's your membership money, donations, and grants that we receive is devoted to cemetery improvements. And we are so grateful to your donations to this critically important initiative. 83% is pretty amazing, isn't it, for a volunteer group? And all of that money goes into cemetery improvements. Now, 6 members contributed funds to a project we call Save a Stone, to professionally repair a gravestone that was of interest to them. Maybe it's a relative's grave, or maybe it's just a stone that they're interested in and they felt badly that it was in bad shape. This is a wonderful program and such an asset to our restoration aspirations. And we already have a whole group of people who are ready to support repairing some stones that they're very involved in for 2020 through 2023. And on the bottom is Chris Cleaning Stones. Our amazing stone cleaning committee completed over 250 hours of work spraying 5,000 stones and brushing stones in 2 sections. So that's a very active volunteer group. Our many landscape volunteers, led by Tom Jones and Chris Pateau, work in collaboration with the City of Rochester to work on projects which are suggested in the city's master plan. Every week during all seasons, our teams are hard at work. Even in the winter, right? You can find them at Mount Hope Cemetery, cutting down seedlings and making repairs. So we're so grateful to, and if you have not had a chance to volunteer with Chris and with Tom, you need to do it. It's quite a wonderful experience. And you're also doing great things for the cemetery. Mm-hmm. We couldn't have a talk without talking about cradle graves. This initiative is so exciting. This will be our 4th year with cradle graves. And in 2022, you can see, as you walked around the cemetery, all of the beautiful gardens that our volunteers had made. And you know, when a person adopts a cradle grave, it's sort of a serious life adventure, because they become very interested in the family of the person whose cradle grave it is. And they like to do research on those families. And all of the expenses that go along with planting flowers, the volunteers pay for everything themselves. So it's an amazing number of people that are volunteering. And right now we have 10 openings. So we have, in other words, we have 10 cradle graves that can be adopted at this point. So what have you all noticed when you walk through the cemetery are cradle graves? That's pretty amazing. We think we have more cradle graves than any other cemetery in the United States. So that makes it exciting. Tree tagging, one of our winter projects, installing tree tags. 2022 is the 3rd year that the Friends of Mount Hope have ordered tree tags, which include QR codes that will guide visitors to our Plants Map site where pictures and tree details are available. This project is led by Tom Jones, our volunteer arborist, and fellow board members and volunteers Christine Klein and Chris Pateau helped Tom in these pictures prepare the batch of tags and correlating maps for installation. The Friends of Mount Hope is very interested in having outreach to the city school district children. And one program that we have is called Studio 678. And this is a writing and a photography program. And it was in 2022, it was culminated by a celebration. And my thanks to Chris Groom and Margaret Mayaki for their involvement in attending this and then greeting the girl that won the award for her photographs in Mount Hope Cemetery. We love to have ceremonies at the Civil War plot. We had 2 ceremonies in 2022, and this is the last one on December 17th at 12 noon. 7 wreaths were laid in the Civil War plot at Mount Hope, and 2 wreaths were placed at the Boyd and Parker Monument, where there are Revolutionary War soldiers. This marks the second year of our Wreaths Across America small ceremony at Mount Hope Cemetery to honor our veterans through the laying of remembrance wreaths on the graves of our Civil War and Revolutionary War veterans. At one day a year at noon all over the United States, wreaths are laid in different cemeteries all over the United States. So we're very happy to be part of that program. And we're grateful for the support of the Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln Camp number 6, led by Ed O'Brien. They not only sponsored the Wreaths Across America program, but they helped us raise funds to restore the GAR Civil War plot. So those are some of the things that we might not have emphasized enough in our annual report. Now this presentation represents the tip of the iceberg of our many initiatives, all done by volunteers, all focused on improving and promoting Mount Hope Cemetery. We love researching the history of early Rochester and celebrating the lives of the many fascinating people buried at Mount Hope. As president of the Friends of Mount Hope, it has been an honor and privilege to work with such a creative, hardworking board and cohort of active volunteers, people truly committed to our mission. We welcome new volunteers. Whatever your talents, you will find a place with the Friends. Check our chart on volunteer opportunities. That's right over here. If you see something you're interested, let us know, because there's room for everyone to join in our projects. So special thanks to each of you, our members and supporters, whose loyalty and generosity makes our work possible. Mount Hope Cemetery is a national treasure, and it belongs to all of us. Thank you. Karina will give our financial report.
Hi, my name is Karina Gassman. I'm just filling in for Henry McCartney while he's visiting his grandchildren. So over the past several years, the Friends of Mount Hope organization has done very well financially. Tour revenues from public groups, or public tours, themed tours, and tours for private organizations and civic groups have increased each year for the past 2 years, and also membership revenues have gone up as well. Contributions have been increasing, and we received over $76,000 in 2022, plus $14,500 from 2 foundations. These sources have provided us with over $150,000 in revenue. Given that the Friends of Mount Hope is an all-volunteer organization, as you may have heard a few times, with low overhead expenses, we're able to devote virtually all of this money to our important efforts, including over $110,000 for cemetery improvements, such as repairing and straightening grave markers. Also, the Friends of Mount Hope will be starting 2023 with about $43,000 in restricted funds available for cemetery improvement projects this year. These funds, coupled with our earned revenues and hopefully even more contributions and grants, should make it possible for the Friends of Mount Hope to continue our increasingly successful efforts to improve our historic Mount Hope Cemetery. So it's my pleasure to thank you, our members and volunteers, for the support that makes everything we do possible.
Now for our important business meeting, we need to elect our class that is expiring in 2023 and will become the class of 2026. Those members are Deb Coffey, Rose O'Keefe, Christine Pitote, Marjorie Searle, Robbie Dreesen, Barbara Figueroa, and Cam Tran. If you haven't sent a proxy and want to vote for these people, would you please raise your hand now? see about 30 hands. We have 77 proxies. And with 107 votes, we are electing the class of 2026. If the people I named are here, would you please stand?
But I actually started volunteering with the Friends in 2018, and at that time, I developed quite a fascination with what we call the Old Chapel in the cemetery, which I'm sure you were all familiar with. The Old Chapel was built, architects were Henry Searle and Son, built in 1862. Just last month, we found out that the Landmark Society actually placed the Old Chapel on their 5 to Revive list. So I'm here tonight to talk briefly about the past, the present, and the future of the Old Chapel in Mount Hope Cemetery. I want to start off by going back to 2008, the winter issue of the Epitaph. Author Sander Vey wrote that the people of Rochester were proud of their Victorian cemetery and wanted to erect a chapel and a vault that reflected the city's prominence and wealth. In June of 1861, going even further back, the Union and Advertiser wrote an article about the building of this chapel. In that, they state that plans and drawings for these works were made by H. Searle and Son Architects after a minute inspection of all the structures of this kind of any note in the country. A glance at the drawings and specifications is enough to assure us that we are to have something at Mount Hope that will excel in everything but outlay of money, anything of the kind in the United States. The Old Chapel has become an iconic structure on the Rochester landscape. This picture, one of the oldest that we have, is from 1890, and you can see we actually get some fairly good details of what the exterior of the Old Chapel looked like. But in 1912, there was a need for a much larger chapel in the cemetery for larger funerals and a larger holding vault. That chapel was realized by architect J. Foster Warner in the new chapel, which is at the south entrance of the cemetery, across the street from the cemetery office. During that same year, 1912, J. Foster Warner designed an addition to the north section of the cemetery, and it would become Rochester's first crematory. As you can see, this is a double retort crematory. It is designed by a man named James Anglis, and we'll come back to him a little bit later. This crematory is the 50th public crematory in the United States. It would stay in operation until 1974. In 1974, the crematory no longer met environmental standards, and so it was shut down by the city of Rochester while they built a 2-retort crematorium next to the office at the south entrance. Just this past year, a 3rd crematorium was added to that structure. If you'll excuse me, I want to go back. This is the only picture of the interior of the chapel that we have. For the past 3 years, we have been asking the public through our social media, through word of mouth, if anybody has any pictures of the interior of the chapel so we can get an idea of what it looked like. We have scoured the George Eastman archives that are online. We've scoured the Rochester Public Library historic photographs that they have, and we haven't been able to find anything that is interior photographs. So once again, if you know somebody that may have an interior photograph, we would love to get our hands on something like that. As I said, the crematorium closed in 1974. 1 year after this picture was taken in 1975, the chapel was boarded up, 1976, and it has remained boarded up since. Friends of Mount Hope were lucky to be given access to the chapel in 2019. So after 44 years of what the city considers mothballing and a lot of neglect to the old chapel, this is what it looked like in 2022. You can see it's boarded up, but it actually doesn't look like it's in that bad a condition. So we get to 2023. The Landmark Society lists this as one of their 5 to revive. The Old Chapel Restoration Committee that's been in existence since 2020 has worked diligently over the past couple of years advocating for this structure to be added to the 5 to revive list. And the Landmark Society, through Caitlin Beeves and through Cynthia Hauk, specifically advocating for this chapel, have finally decided to add it to their list. But again, it doesn't look like it's in that bad of shape. So what does it mean to be on the 5 to revive list? 5 to revive is a list of 5 significant historic properties whose rehabilitations can become catalytic projects for the neighborhoods and communities that surround them. The goal of the program is to return these important historic resources to a prominent role in their respective communities as economic and social assets. So, the building is not in as good a condition as it looks like on the outside. Remember, you can't judge a book by its cover. So let's take a look inside and see why the Landmark Society and why the Friends of Mount Hope are so interested in restoration and preservation of this building. When you first walk into the building, this is what you would see. This is the west wall of the original chapel space. There was a little ghost in there when I took this picture. You can see how the paneling is falling off of the brick understructure. This here, this white stripe, is actually a downspout. When the chapel was built in 1862, the drainage system was interior, so there are 4 internal downspouts. They were made of lead, and after over a century and a half of use, deteriorated and were left unrepaired. So the interior of the chapel has suffered from extensive water damage, and you can see what it's done here. You can even see mold growing on the panels. If you look slightly to your right, west wall, this is the entrance into the holding vault that's built 35 feet into the hill. That's where bodies would be stored in their caskets during the winter months when the ground was frozen and you could not hand dig a grave. And then this is the northwest corner. If you notice the downspout here, you can see the damage that has been done because these downspouts have basically been neglected for many years. These downspouts do have heat traces in them, and they were put in 1999. Like I said, they have been neglected over the years. And when we gained access to the old chapel in 2019, we soon realized that the heat traces had been turned off at the electric circuit box. These PVC pipes that are wrapped in insulation don't work anymore. They're all cracked and they leak. If you go in there during a rainstorm or during the snow melt, you can actually see water coming down the sides of these downspouts. You can see the damage that it's done. And, oh, wait a second, I brought a little cat toy with me. Hold on a second. Oh, it's not working on the screen. Take it back home for the kitties. Down here, you can see the hole in the floor, the rot around the base of the downspout, and then where we have the cone, that floor is, there's a hole there. It's completely gone. And we avoid that area in front of the crematorium whenever we get into the old chapel. Now, if you continue to rotate to the right, you'll see an interior wall. This interior wall was built in 1912. J. Foster Warner designed this wall, which had 2 pocket doors that would close off the crematory addition so that you could perhaps still have services in the church without having to look at the crematory retorts, if you will. Fortunately, in 2010, the interior stained glass windows were removed, boxed, and are now in city storage, as well as 2 of the original chandeliers from 1912. This is what the crematory space looks like now, if you can remember the picture that I showed earlier. You'll notice that up above, all the paneling that has fallen off the walls and all of the marble casing that has fallen off. Now, the Friends of Mount Hope have been very careful to save every single architectural artifact that we have found in the old chapel. And we have collected them together. You can see where we're laying them out here. We do have a lot of the marble that has fallen off of the facing of the retorts here, as well as a lot of the paneling pieces and other architectural pieces. Some of them, quite frankly, probably couldn't be used again, but we're keeping them for historical purposes so that we can know what that paneling and so forth looked like when we do restore this chapel. Moving on to the west wall, this is the northeast corner of the building. You can see the paneling has come out of the ceiling. You can see the condition of the stained glass windows. You can see the downspout here, the mold that's even growing on the bricks as well as the wood. So now let's swing to the left. Over here we have the main stained glass window. It actually has a fan in it that's actually hooked up to a humidistat controller to help control the environmental conditions inside the chapel. In 2019, when we first went in the chapel, this also was turned off. So it has been turned on since then. It's had hopefully abated some of the mold and mildew growth because of the moisture in the building. Here we have the southeast corner of the building, and this is probably the downspout that's doing most of the damage at this point to the old chapel. This picture here is the base of the downspout. You can see the water on the floor that's starting to rot through. I took that picture yesterday. Unfortunately, I would say by this time next year, if we don't do something about the water infiltration, we probably won't be able to walk in those areas of the chapel at all, and we'll have to have a little trail that goes through the middle of it. And then let's get to the holding vault. The holding vault is actually in fairly good condition. In 1862, Henry Searle and Son designed this holding vault with a double wall. There's a 6-inch airspace between the two walls. So the interior of this part of the structure is not exposed to the earth that it's basically buried in. And so it has kept the vault in pretty good condition over the years, especially if you compare it to the chapel space and the crematory space. So, we're on the 5 to Revive list, which means that the Landmark Society is going to be an advocate for the restoration and rehabilitation of this building. And it's going to support the Friends in our efforts to restore this building. But what do we want to do with this building once it's restored? We don't need a funerary chapel in the cemetery anymore. We don't want to restore the retorts and have another crematorium in the cemetery. But as Pat has always mentioned, Mount Hope Cemetery belongs to all of us. So let's restore this chapel and make it a place for the community to use. We talked with a young, well, he wasn't so young, but a gentleman who in the 1980s was very interested in restoration of the chapel. Turns out he was a musician, and he told us that the acoustics inside of the chapel are fantastic. And it's interesting to note that Henry Searle Jr., or Henry Searle Sr., as he progressed in his career, would be known for his design of acoustics in the buildings that he designed. So think of our local young people who are maybe studying at the Eastman School of Music. Why not open up a restored chapel and let them do recitals there? Can you imagine the warm summer afternoons when you go into the cemetery? No space to sit in the chapel to listen to the recital, but we'll leave the doors open so that you can sit out on the lawn and listen to a violinist or what have you. What about our artists in the community? A space for art exhibitions for local artists. What about historic exhibitions, not only for the cemetery, but for Rochester in general, which we, the Friends of Mount Hope, are experts at, showcasing our research. Could also be used as a place for lectures and seminars, annual meetings of the Friends of Mount Hope even. Or imagine going to the gatehouse and checking in for your tour and being told by the friendly receptionist there that, oh, the tour will start inside of the old chapel down the road, and being able to go in and experience this structure before you actually start your tour of Mount Hope. There's a lot of people, for some reason, that like to take wedding pictures in the cemetery, especially in the north section of the cemetery. What if we rented out this space for actual weddings to take place? And there are many other community uses that I'm sure you all can think of and that I can think of that could be used in a restored old chapel. But the Friends over the past couple of years, since 2019, have actually been able to show the city of Rochester and our community how this chapel can be a part of our community once again. The fall of 2019, we opened up the chapel as one of the stops on our torchlight tours, and we were treated to a dramatic, interpretive performance by one of our local actors here in Rochester. It's an event that people still talk about today, actually. In the fall of 2021, we were contacted by the Graduate School of Architecture at RIT. There were 2 graduate students who wanted to do one of their capstone projects, focusing on the old chapel. They developed architectural plans for reuse of the old chapel, plus a community mausoleum that would sit on the hillside between the Gould Mausoleum and the Rao Mausoleum. In the summer of 2022, we were contacted by a group of young architects in one of the local architectural firms. They wanted to have a look at the interior chapel and learn about its history because they were going to design an outfit to be showcased at the fall 2022 Fashion Week here in Rochester. And then, who can forget the Fringe Festival, using the Rao Mausoleum, the Gould Mausoleum, as well as the old chapel for a backdrop to When the Souls Rise. That brought in over 1,000 visitors for a dance, music, and light performance that I'm sure none of us can forget. So these are ways that we have allow the chapel to be part of the community again, but there are many, many more things that we could do once this chapel is restored. But there's not just the chapel space in the old chapel, there's also the crematorium space. So what can we do with that? Here again is the old 1912 picture, a current picture. This picture over here on the right is of the Gardner Earl Memorial Chapel at Oakwood Cemetery in Troy, New York. This crematory, this retort, was designed by James Englis, and it was restored several years ago. These retorts are, again, of historical significance. I contacted a man named Jason Engler a couple of years ago and asked about the historical significance of these retorts and the whole crematorium apparatus. Now, Jason Engler this is his title, Cremation Historian for the Cremation Association of North America and the National Museum of Funeral History. I would love to have that title. He said that certainly if you, that Mount Hope is one of only a handful of the early crematories that were built in the US that remains original and intact. There have been thoughts about removing this historical structure and turning this space into something else. But after learning about this, I think it might be worth a restoration of these just for historical purposes. Again, you start your tour in the old chapel, or maybe you end your tour in the old chapel and you get a feel for what crematoriums at the turn of the century would have looked like. So what about the holding vault? Let's think about possibilities for that. This is Arnos Vale Cemetery in Bristol, England, and this is the vault in the basement of their Anglican chapel. They are using the space for historical exhibits and also for housing cemetery artifacts that they want to leave on display for the public. So one possibility. And this, like I mentioned earlier, art exhibitions, can you imagine artwork with all the artists hanging in our holding vault, our restored holding vault in the cemetery? In 2016, the city published a master plan for the cemetery. And in that master plan, the authors envisioned maybe turning the holding vault into a columbarium. Now, this would be very beneficial for the city because it would generate income, and it would generate a lot of income because there are a lot of niches that you can put in to that holding vault that used to hold up to 100 caskets. So just one possibility. So let's talk about the future. Our next steps are for the Old Chapel Committee to meet with the Landmark Society to develop strategies and plans for the future. Those plans, of course, are going to include working in partnership with the City of Rochester because they own the building. Now, the Friends work closely with the City of Rochester through the cemetery manager. And I think the cemetery manager, the new one, Gerard, is taking quite a liking to us. At least, I think so. But we'll work through him to develop some type of an agreement with the City of Rochester. Now, the City of Rochester, we don't have the resources. They don't have the resources to restore this structure. I mean, there are too many other concerns in our community that they need to spend the resources on. And we, the Friends, believe that we could actually do restoration of this structure at probably a much lesser cost, with more quality of workmanship, with just the resources that we have access to here in the Rochester community. But again, we cannot do anything with this chapel independently and on our own. We have to work in partnership with the city, which is something we've done in the past, something that we do currently, and something that we will continue to do in the future. Once we have some type of an agreement, and I'm hoping by the end of the summer we can finally stop that water infiltration. That is what is destroying the interior of this chapel. There are some structural issues that were identified in 2016 that also need to be taken care of, but the main concern now is the water infiltration. And that's one of the main reasons why we're on the 5 to Revive list, because this, as you saw the interior, we're on the brink. We're about ready to lose the interior of this chapel, which would leave it just a shell of brick and Lockport limestone. So once we stop the water infiltration, like I said, I'm hoping that this can be done by the end of the summer so that we can prevent any future water damage as we go through our fall, winter, and spring next year. Then we'll have to focus on some of the structural issues. There are some support beams, steel beams that have completely deteriorated to a point where it's becoming very dangerous on some of the floors, to walk on some of the floors in the old chapel. Sorry I didn't tell you volunteers that a couple of weeks ago when we were in there working. But and then once the plywood over the doors and windows is no longer any good. There's a lot of air that comes through those. There's one window that actually doesn't even have plywood over it completely. So we still get the outside air coming in to the chapel constantly. We need to replace that plywood over the windows and the doors, and then we need to install an environmental control system. There used to be an HVAC system in the structure, but that is obviously no longer working. So we need to put a new one in so that we can control the environment inside the chapel. These are the next steps. Now, this isn't something that we're going to be able to do overnight, and Pat constantly reminds me that I need to have patience, which I don't have a lot of. But this is going to be a project that's going to take us years and years to complete. I want to end tonight by going back to the article that was written by Sander Vey in the winter of 2008 for the Epitaph. In his last paragraph, I think this sums up my sentiments exactly. He says, "For many decades, the chapel represented a sense of achievement and pride as one of the first of its kind. In more recent times, the chapel has become a symbol of what once was. One can only hope that the architecturally significant structure, now in a state of abeyance, can one day be restored and put to new uses. It would be a shame to see this unique window into the past vanish from the landscape of our children. It is, after all, our responsibility to preserve it. In the coming years, we will be asking membership for your support. Support from the community is going to speak louder than any words can speak. We, of course, will want your monetary support if you're able to do that, but we'll just hold off on that for now. And we'll hopefully in the future be able to introduce different fundraising programs that we can use specifically for restoration of specific parts in the old chapel. For instance, sponsoring a stained glass window reconstruction. But what we need most of all is your support. You are the citizens of Rochester. You are the community. You are the ones who benefit from any type of restoration of this structure. And you are the Friends of Mount Hope. You're our backbone, and you're the ones that we're going to rely on for the advocacy and allyship when we develop a plan with the city to look to restoring this chapel and bringing it back to community uses. Thank you for your time tonight. Christine? Pat?
Isn't that exciting? Isn't it exciting to imagine the dreams that we have as Friends of Mount Hope?
Dreams, it's a reality.
It's going to be reality, that's true. Okay. Now we have another dream that's become a reality. Our board has been diligent in its pursuit of succession planning, which is so critical in responsible planning and stewardship. It is such an honor for me to introduce to you all Christine Klein, who has been nominated to become president of the Friends of Mount Hope in our election of officers next week. Christine currently serves as the chair of the membership committee and co-chair of the website committee. In addition, she's part of the Epitaph team, communications committee, and restoration committee. She joined the Friends in 2019 and became a board member in 2020. After a long career as a librarian, she retired from the California State Library in 2018 and moved back to Rochester. Christine holds a Bachelor of Arts in Music History, a Master of Library Science, and a law degree. Isn't that great? Her interest in cemeteries goes back to childhood when Sunday outings included trips to cemeteries around Monroe County. Before moving back to Rochester, she served as a member of the board of the Old City Cemetery Committee in Sacramento, California. She enjoys hiking, researching family history, and walking her dogs in the cemetery. A native Rochesterian, Christine has a deep interest in the city's history and folklore. It is my honor and joy to introduce you to Christine Klein.
Thank you, Pat. What Pat didn't tell you is that she's sort of been, I don't want to use this word, but grooming me for the past 2 years. 7 o'clock in the morning, we're talking to each other for, an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. It isn't unusual to wake up at about 7 o'clock, which is, I think, normal for some of us, and I'll have an email that says, call me, and it will have sent at 4:24 a.m. Who's awake then? Really, truly. But thank you so much, Matt. I want to thank you all for coming tonight, and I also want to thank you very much for your support. It's what keeps us going. It keeps us motivated. It keeps us energized. It's because of you we can do the work that we do. Isn't the cemetery incredible? It is just an amazing place. Where else can you find art, architecture, flora, fauna, history, all in one location? And even better yet, this outdoor museum is free. It's incredible. Where else are you going to find something like that? You won't. So Pat is going to be stepping down as president, and she is going to be an incredibly impossible act to follow, and I'm not even going to try. She's too amazing. So she asked me to talk a little bit about what the vision for 2023 is. And I've been pondering that for some time. We already have great tours with excellent tour guides. We have the amazing epitaph. We have beautiful cradle graves. We have the beautification of the cemetery by repairing stones, planting trees, and maintaining the landscape. So what is my vision? What is our vision, more likely? Well, the word that comes to my mind is transition. This year will be a year of transition for us. While I've been talking to Pat for 2 years, at least 2 years, every morning, or almost every morning, I sort of know what she does. But there have been times when I'll say, oh, I am so thankful that Pat is taking care of that, and I don't have to deal with it. And now it's going to be, Christine, guess what? You get to deal with it. Luckily for me, Pat isn't going anywhere. She's still going to be on the board, and she's still going to be there as someone that I can rely on for help and advice. Excuse me. In the year ahead, not only do I need to really learn the role of what the president does and doesn't do, I'll be looking at what we do well, what we can do better, what we are doing that doesn't accord with our mission, if there's anything, and what we should be doing that we aren't doing. It will be working with cemetery management, the board, our members, and the community. And what I want to be able to do, working together, is to promote the cemetery and keep it, to promote the cemetery and keep its and the city's history alive, as well as being a remarkable place to visit. I'm always happy to hear your thoughts and recommendations. You can send a message through our website. You can talk to me or any of our board members. Together, all of us together, will continue to keep the cemetery the jewel that it is. And thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you so much for coming